talked about it in letters, and we talked about it on the phone. But how you really feel about it, I don't really know. What's your take on Cassavetes? 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 Misogynist. Genius. Misogynist. Genius. Misogynist. Genius. Misogynist. Genius. What's your take on Cassavetes? What's your take on Cassavetes? What's your take on...
Welcome to There's Sometimes a Buggy, irresponsible opinions about classic film, End of the World edition ongoing. I'm Elise.
I'm Dave. This week it's Setsuko Haras, Part 3. We're going to be talking about Temptation from 1948 and Here's to the Young Lady from 1949.
We have to acknowledge also that these movies were made about a year apart according to IMDb, with Temptation, or YUWAKU, appearing at the end of February 1948, and Here's to the Young Lady, I won't try to pronounce that, appearing in March of 1949. Woman in the Typhoon Area appeared in September of 1948. We did that in our last episode, but we didn't know about Temptation then.
That's right.
So that's why it's coming later. So what did you think of these movies?
I like them both a lot.
I loved them. They were really good. They were even better, I think, than the last double feature, Setsuko double feature.
And these are totally unknown to us.
These directors.
Well, no, the director of Temptation we now know because he directed A Ball at the Anjo House.
Still pretty much unknown to us, though.
Right. And then Here's to the Young Lady just came out of nowhere. For us.
As far as I can pronounce his name, that director is Keisuke Kinoshita, shall we say?
Sure.
Kinoshita. He actually has quite a lengthy Wikipedia entry. Take what you can get on these lesser-known to the West Japanese directors. Sometimes there'll be a lot, sometimes there won't be much. He was particularly known for having worked with Hideko Takamine.
Oh, okay.
Great star, Japanese diva of
She
the
worked with Narusa
50s,
a lot.
50s and early 60s, along with, yes, Narusa.
But we're not talking about that one first. We're talking about Temptation.
So yes, this was in a completely different mode from Ball at the Anjo House.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, this was a director of many, maybe a chameleon type director.
Well, we'll have to see.
We'd have to know.
Explore more of Kôzaburô Yoshimura's films.
This one was, it seemed to be a sort of heavily repressed, quiet woman's picture melodrama until it erupts into fucking craziness.
Well, so in that way, it's not that dissimilar from A Ball at the Anjo House.
Anjo House was fucking crazy for at least half of its running time.
Well, as soon as it got to the ball.
Exactly.
This one, yeah, it did hold fire a little bit longer, but that may be his signature, slow burn.
Sure. So what do we have to say about this?
Should we give a little rundown?
Sure.
Well, Setsuko Haras' character, father has died at the beginning of the film. We meet her at her father's grave, and as she is taking her leave of the grave, another man comes along. Turns out that he is a politician who studied with her father and was deeply devoted to him.
And this actor is
Shin Saburi. We know him from a couple of Ozu films, Equinox Flower.
The one I remember best is Flavor of Green Tea Over Rice. He's very good in that. Equinox Flower.
He's wonderful as the dad in that. It's one of the only times it wasn't Chishiryu as the dad.
Isn't that the one where he initially disapproves of his daughter's marriage? Is it Setsuko Haras, though?
No.
No, it's not. But I don't want to spoil about, because that's basically the plot, and then either he comes around or he doesn't, and I'm not going to spoil that.
No, we won't spoil it. But yeah, he's conflicted. He agonizes through that film, just as he agonizes through this film.
He's great at agonizing.
He's very good at showing a pained expression on his face and feeling like he doesn't know what to do or how to fight his way forward in this terrible world of ours.
He's the perfect, trying to do the best thing, middle-aged guy.
Yeah, and he's not nearly as middle-aged in 1948, so he's probably about 40 in this movie. In the Ozu movies, he's getting a little older.
Do you remember how old Setsuko Haras is in this movie?
27?
Yeah, so she's playing young, and the way that they've done that...
She's supposed to be 21, yeah.
So she's 28.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they've gone about that is she's doing the no-makeup look, as compared compared to the other film.
the typhoon area, you mean?
No.
Oh.
The other film we watched.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure. They have this meeting there, and they both pay their respects together to her father, and she has nowhere to go, really.
She is a medical student. You mentioned who he was. He was a student of her father's.
And now he's an MP, a member of parliament.
Do we ever really figure out what her father taught?
No. But we know that he was a famous liberal who was expelled from the university during the height of the fascist period in Japan.
So the background she's given here kind of relates a little bit to No Regrets for Our Youth.
Yeah, very much so.
Except that her father hasn't left, well, that father's not dead, so that would be why her status has definitely fallen here financially with her father's death, even though he was eventually invited back to the university.
She has to scrape along and try to keep her scholarly career going.
She says that she isn't going to have any money to live on, though, if she tries to return to her studies.
Exactly.
And then they have to stay somewhere overnight.
Yeah, because they're on their way back to Tokyo.
Which I guess is a long trip.
They have to spend the night at an inn, and there's only room enough for them to stay together in a room on one sleeping area. He tries to insist that they get separate beds at least, but the innkeeper just says, forget it, we're too booked, this is all you're gonna get tonight. And
this movie is really incredible, especially considering how big this director can go with his melodrama. Really incredible for things happening without anything explicit being said.
Yeah.
So on this first night, basically that they've fallen in love, although nothing of the kind is discussed or acted.
Well, yeah, that's all we know from that. But then we learn that there's a huge backstory to it, right? Like, he used to visit their house when she was a teenager, and she clearly fell in love with him then.
Sure.
Now, he noticed her, but I think that we can take him at his word that he didn't think of her romantically when she was a 12-year-old.
11-year-old, yeah.
Hopefully. But anyway, there's this long established rapport between them.
Yeah, but speaking of that, it's clearly intended to be
a father-substitute.
Father-daughter relationship. So he might have felt love for her of a confusing sort, even if he wasn't specifically feeling erotic love for her as a child. Obviously, for both of them, this filial bond has now turned into something sexual.
For people who are students of Setsuko Hara's career, especially as it develops from this point, it's quite instructive to see her involved in this smoldering relationship with a father substitute.
Oh yeah, and that's the other movie it kind of refers back to is Ball at the Anjo House.
Yeah, they're coming from a totally different social strata.
Something I found interesting about these two movies is how much, as we saw in some of our Jennifer Jones movies after she'd done 4 or 5, how thoroughly these are commentaries on the Setsuko Hara persona even before she starts doing her films with Ozu.
Yeah, so it may not have been something Ozu invented at all. He may just have said, okay, well, here's an amazing actress that I'm developing this incredible rapport with, and let's just explore these themes because that's what she's already been doing.
Yeah, seemingly. And directors have already been making use of that.
That's a new take on Ozu, I think.
It's interesting to think about what star persona means in this context, because in the Hollywood studio era context, it's often used to refer to a persona that is deliberately developed by the studios. But the truth is that very often studios developed wrong personas for their stars, or didn't even figure out how to use them at all until eventually, often through the star's own initiative, perhaps combined with a director working with them, finally they discover something that worked, and then the star would kind of continue in that vein, right?
So you're thinking of Kendall talking about the Orchid Lady?
Yeah, that's one example. Trying to
turn Carol Lombard into an American Marlene Dietrich?
Sure. That's one example that stands out. Or, the way Bogart or Cary Grant were misused until finally they had a hit with the public thanks to a particular movie, and then people would, further directors and the studio themselves would be like, okay, this is how to use them, right? So it's not necessarily something where a studio has to craft your persona. It seems to happen through more of directors watching each other's movies, right? And persona accumulating in that way as a star becomes known to a public public through an accumulative set of movies.
I think it can happen in a number of different ways, but certainly that is one way. There were studios that actually had a plan and followed it.
Like who? Who did this actually work with? Like someone like John Garfield had a persona before he even came to the studio.
Yeah, that's true. But think of Clark Gable. I think MGM, they really did decide that they wanted to make him the biggest, best, tough guy leading man of the 30s. And I don't think it's any one director.
Well, MGM would be the studio to talk about, and they really did try to craft these personas for the different stars, and it usually did work at least for a time, and then maybe the star would have to reinvent themselves when the bloom had come off.
And it would get inflected in really enriching ways by directors, like think of Gable on loan out to Frank Capra. He adds a new wrinkle to the Gable persona that was already there in embryo, but really gets drawn out, the sort of whimsical side of...
So I have no idea how much any of the, because we don't know enough about the Japanese studios, how much they had anything to do with creating this eternal virgin, father-obsessed character.
Just from what we've read, and from the one wartime film that we saw, that was their idea for Setsuko Hara as the daughter of the samurai. She was drafted for that specific purpose. But then all of these incredible nuances that get spun out of that original persona.
Well, that has to do with directors and writers.
Yeah, and a culture itself processing.
Well, yeah, and yes, of course, the cultural discussion, the critics, the fanzines, the sense of the public reaction.
And this culture is in incredibly rapid period of transition, looking at a nation that was at war in China and then all over the world for more than, well, for like 8-9 years. And they have lost completely and suffered terrible things on the home islands. And now they're trying to pick up the pieces, and they're occupied by the United States. So that's what's going on in Japan at this time.
And it's very interesting, thinking about the Kendall book, how all of this becomes processed through female characters and domestic dramas, in part due to censorship of what could be, like you couldn't make openly political films unless they happened to support the American occupation viewpoint.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. This is a political film. One of the characters, everything he's doing outside of the home has to do with politics and breaking with his political party, which sounds kind of like a centrist liberal party, and it seems like he is moving over into a more socialist-leaning party. He says he needs to support his friend who is advocating for universal medical coverage.
Yeah, they wouldn't like that. Maybe the American occupation was okay with that. They wouldn't like that now.
No.
Well, actually, I think Hollywood movies can talk about that shit as much as they want.
Yeah, they can.
Movies are allowed to be liberal. I don't think they do talk about it that much, though, unfortunately.
We're at the inn, and yes, this rapport is harkened back to by them and grows as they converse about what she's going to do now, and he invites her impulsively to come live at his house.
He's going to take care of her.
She says, no, I'm independent. I'm going to make my own way.
She's sobbing.
Yeah.
She also says her life has no point anymore, since the point of her life had been to help her father be happy.
Yeah, and part of helping him be happy was to excel as a medical student and pursue this great career. And now even that, it's like, well, what am I even doing it for? The person I was trying to impress is dead.
Then we see them each go home, and we see him visit his wife under kind of strange circumstances.
Well, she has TB.
Well, yeah, we know that because she coughs a little, and we know...
And it's a sanatorium.
What that means
in
a movie. Is it introduced to us as a sanatorium?
Yeah.
Did we see a sign that says sanatorium? Okay, I completely missed that.
The subtitles say sanatorium, yeah.
Totally missed that.
So she's in the Margaret Sullivan situation.
Think about when I'm watching and read subtitles at the same time, unfortunately, because one is kind of necessary for the other, but that's how it is with me.
She's been there for a long time.
But I know what a cough means in a movie made before 1950, so I still figured it out.
There's some hope that maybe she'll get better and she can come home, but it seems kind of forlorn.
And we also know just from the kind of delicate way that he is approaching her and the cough that they're not having sex anymore.
No, any rapid movement could rip your lungs open again. We've seen that in Three Comrades, we haven't talked about it on the cast yet. yet, but we will when we get to Margaret Sullivan.
Yeah. And this is, of course, another actress who appeared in, well, many Japanese directors' films at the time, but also in Ozu.
Oh yeah, we've seen about 20 movies with Haruko Sugimura.
She's excellent, as usual. Yeah.
Always a little different.
A character actress, although sometimes she was a star.
Sure.
She was a star in the Narusa movie that we saw. One of them.
That's their family situation. He's practically a widower.
Well, that's a little harsh. She is alive.
He hardly ever sees her, though.
Well, we later learn
that's what I mean.
He only visits once a month.
He's a busy man. The family is being raised by the maid, basically, I guess.
Yeah.
But when Setsuko Hara, her situation is that she lives in a kind of tenement amongst people who are facing various types of difficulties, including her sort of romantic interest in the apartment block, who is arrested when we first meet him for selling flour.
As saccharin.
Yeah.
Apparently this is a very bad black market thing to do.
The argument at first there is that he didn't know. He bought it because they told him it was saccharin and he was selling
it. According to one of the other girls.
Later on, though, when he goes to court, he admits that he knew what he was doing.
And it was not worthy of a student. He was shamed.
He goes to jail.
Yeah.
Although it's a light sentence, we're told. Now, all of that, he probably would have gotten the book thrown at him, except that Shin Saburi helps out. And that's because Setsuko Hara asks for his aid.
What's the character name?
Rukichi, and Takeko is Setsuko Hara.
So Rukichi comes to visit her and ask her again. And he's mentioned this already to his wife. And this was another excellent little economical scene with the wife, where he talks about wanting this girl to come live with him, and then the wife is, oh, how old is she now? And he says 21, but still silly like a child, and the wife is like, oh, really? And the whole thing, you just know everybody knows everything that's going on.
Yeah.
That everybody else is thinking. It's amazing. Love little economical scenes like that.
Beautifully done.
And very understated acting.
This is a pretty depressing situation. She's exactly in the right frame of mind to accept an invitation to go live somewhere else.
Well, and she also already has a crush on this guy.
But her independent streak is now like, what, I'm gonna hang around here where they're arresting my friends and taking them off to prison? It's just terrible. So yeah, she goes to live at his place. We meet his kids.
And they are by far the nicest children ever to be seen in a Japanese movie, although I guess I'm only going by Ozu, whose children are worse than Cirque's.
Yeah, but there were nice kids in the other movie too, don't forget. So this is a night of nice kids.
Oh, that's true. I'm getting them mixed up already. But yeah, so these are like really nice and fun kids, although they're normal and fight with each other, a boy and girl. We see her just joyously looking after them, the happiest nanny. But I think her joy is actually an effect of being in the house with this guy.
Yeah, and also having a purpose again, right?
True.
She does derive a sense of fulfillment from doing things for others, clearly.
But she is still studying, though.
Yeah, she hasn't given up her studies.
Now, you remember that blog I talked about? Japan on Film on WordPress?
Yes.
Right? So I took a look at what this, because it's hard to find any reactions to these movies online. So our blogger, who is a Setsuko Hara fan, our unnamed blogger, says here, at this point in the story, where she goes to live with Rukichi, Hara has walked out of an Ozu picture, all head down, sideways looks, sick grin when talking to Saburi, and that general I'm not worth anything attitude that Ozu encouraged, and Japanese audiences of the time seemed to find so attractive. It's hard to believe that she is the independent, intelligent, and serious woman who could fight her way into the world of male doctors. And I'm not particularly sure the filmmakers believe that either, since all the scenes we see when Hera seems really alive, relaxed, and comfortable are when she is being the housewife and surrogate mother. What do you think of that take?
No, I don't think I agree with that. I think she seems very competent. And sure, she's competent at taking care of people around the house, but she's also very competent when having political discussions with Shin Saburi.
I don't see where we've ever seen evidence or in her persona that Setsuko Hara is not intelligent or serious.
Yeah, that's weird.
I think maybe this just came out wrong, maybe, what he was trying to say. It is true that we aren't, like, despite the fact that she's a medical student, we don't see her in that context ever.
Not a lot, no, just see her with her books sometimes.
Yeah, she seems just as joyful when she's studying and simultaneously looking after the kids. And if you think this is impossible, my best friend is doing it right now, simultaneously looking after her son, her small son, at home, quarantined, and studying online. So it can actually be done, not by me, I'm telling you that much.
No.
And she's, like, having having the time of her life too, apparently.
No, I don't think I agree with that take. I think that she seems very interested in many facets of life inside and outside of that house. And she takes a very strong interest in his political career and actually is quite instrumental in helping him to think through his decision to break with the party.
Mm-hmm. And she does that in her very feminine
Yeah.
Hara way that really isn't like any other actress, Japanese or not, that I've ever seen, with the smiles and with the... But it's always different. The persona is always different, and she's very flirty in this film.
Yeah. In a lot of the movies we've seen...
Oh, that's another thing about these two movies, is that it's a rare opportunity for us to see her actually being or falling in love with somebody.
It is pretty rare in the Ozu movies. She has a lot of feelings in those movies, but they're not usually strongly directed towards any person except for possibly her father's. In this film, at least, it's a father surrogate, but they are very definite romantic feelings.
And sexual feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the movie does continue for a long time, though, with that status quo. We see the daily rounds. We see
There's an amazing amount of almost silent film-like visuals with music.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very lyrical movie, and it's very beautifully shot.
Yeah, we get comfortable with that. And we do get an extended visit scene to the sanatorium where Setsuko Hara comes along. The wife sees this young girl, and all of her worst fears are realized tenfold. Because you don't expect Setsuko Hara, even if you're expecting a vibrant 21-year-old.
What do you think about his decision to take her along? Why do you think he does that?
Well, I'm sure that he feels like that's the only honest thing to do.
Exactly. He's just having to be completely honest. He doesn't want to conceal anything from his wife.
It would seem worse if he just said, well, we've got a 21-year-old living with us and you're not going to meet her. She's part of the family, but I'm not going to let you see her. Maybe he should have not brought her.
Yeah, I mean, that is my feeling. We do watch this woman just getting tortured, and there's this amazing editing and cross-cutting between her watching her face and Setsuko Hara joyously, energetically, and vibrantly playing jump rope with the kids, which, like, she can't even take care of her kids, let alone
jump rope
in a way that becomes a metaphor for fucking her husband.
Yeah.
And then there's this amazing moment when they talk about that, about how they can't have sex anymore.
Yeah.
And she grabs his thigh.
She does.
In a gesture that's at once carnal and possessive.
Yes.
Quite
you're
amazing.
mine.
Yeah. But also, your thigh is mine.
Yeah, your thigh is mine, but...
I can't do anything with it, but...
No, the doctors say I can't. That all goes terribly. She has to go back to bed.
I did wonder, I don't know about you, but I did wonder if we were going to get... There's only two ways this can go, which is that the wife continues to fight for her husband, or the wife decides to kind of agree to an open marriage under the circumstances. I'm kind of glad it didn't go that way.
No, it went...
The possessive gesture is telling.
I think it was done perfectly. This way, it does keep everyone sympathetic and believable. I do understand everyone's emotions in this triangle.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. And nobody's being a saint.
No, that's true.
I don't mind movies with people being saints. Sometimes I think that's interesting. But in this case, no. We've just got three very likable people racked by everyday torments related to emotions.
And there are just so many... Unfortunately, talking about it in terms of plot does just make it sound like a basic melodrama, but there are such lovely touches in it, like the little boy waking up his mother by waving the flower in her face.
Something to see, and unfortunately...
Not easy to see.
Not easy to see. But if you listen to our description of it and you're interested, definitely let us know. We can point you in the right direction.
We'll try anyway.
Yeah. Matters come to a head. A lot of things start to happen at once. She diagnoses, here we see some of her medical training coming into play in a small way.
It's almost like George Brent in Dark Victory.
She identifies that he
Feel this cloth with your eyes closed.
He's nearing a sort of nervous collapse from exhaustion.
Yeah.
She asks him to close his eyes and put his hands out, and she can see that he's shaking.
Yeah.
And she prescribes rest, which he doesn't get. He can't because he's in the midst of all this political turmoil and maybe switching political parties. And then he goes off to a conference, or this convention, and she gets this telegram, which actually interrupts an extended date with her old friend who's back out of prison for selling flour and trying to get back on track as a medical student again. And that's actually kind of fun. And there's a lot of misdirection there. It never quite fools you into thinking that she could really fall in love with this guy,
Well,
but she has a good time with him.
Most of the time is spent with him staring at her, not the other way around.
No, he is obviously offering himself as an option.
Yeah,
and
but she's not paying any attention.
No, but she doesn't dislike him. He
No,
stays for an entire pack of cigarettes.
Yeah, an entire box full of smokes.
And she seems to have, fun with him.
Sure.
She doesn't find him unappealing. And in principle, he's probably a better match. He's the same age. He's a medical student.
I just don't think she's thinking about that at all.
No, he's pretty callow. As that is finally coming to an end, that long date that they have at the house, she gets a telegram saying Rikishi has collapsed and they need her to come.
Yeah. Oh, and this was another subtle and interesting filming thing, that most of this has been done in a very naturalistic style of acting, but whenever the melodrama really heats up, there's like an end of scene, sudden burst of stylized acting.
Yeah, and basically from the moment this telegram arrives, we're...
And montage as well.
We're into Ball at the Anjo House time here.
Not immediately. There is a little baseball scene that kind of lets off some
yeah, but she has
relief.
Rushed off by train thinking he's dead, and the movie makes you feel like, yeah, they may have missed their chance to say anything to each other. Then she gets there, and yes, it's true, it is momentarily deferred because they just say, oh, he's okay, he's fine. Sorry, we sent that telegram.
He has anemia.
Yeah, he just had to sleep it off. He's playing baseball now.
He needs an iron supplement.
Now he's a terrible baseball player.
Very, very bad.
As we see. She laughs at that. And then they go back to the hotel. They have a talk. They have dinner. And they think about going dancing. And here we see
they do go dancing.
Yeah. But first...
also she has 2 beers. Well, no.
2, yeah.
Yeah, she chugs the first one, though.
Yeah.
But she says she learned from her father?
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. At university, you've got to be able to drink. A lot of chugging.
We know they're getting into very dangerous territory here, because things that they've been repressing could easily come to the surface if they start dancing, especially if they've had some beers, and that's exactly what happens. It's all unspoken, of course, but the dance just keeps getting closer and closer.
And then she just about, faints in his arms.
Yeah, she really melts into him.
Then she rushes off to the sea to process some of her emotional turmoil as she stares into it.
She comes back to the inn.
Because he's invited her to stay the night.
Yes, but now he realizes this is not going well. She can't cope with it anymore, and he doesn't want to make her cope with these kinds of feelings. He's just going to go back to Tokyo. She can stay and go back in the next day.
But she decides to come along with him.
And they have a very silent train trip back home. Again, both of them trying to come to terms with the fact that they're so close to an adulterous affair here. Then everything spills over when they get back to the apartment, where they basically finally come around to talking a little bit about it, and then he just lunges at her and starts kissing her.
It would seem to be the case from the filming that you could not at this point show 2 people kissing on a Japanese screen.
It's hard to say whether that's a style thing or whether that's a censorship thing. It does feel more like a censorship thing, but it works really well, even if it is just the director's choice.
We get prepared for this interesting cutting when they first enter the room together, and there's a shot just of their bodies that just is kind of like a distortion effect, because obviously it's been shot in a standard way with torsos and close-ups up to this point.
Yeah.
So the shot just with their bodies just has this instant charge to it, and then that prepares us for the actual kiss scene where it's just their bodies again and we don't actually get their faces kissing. But if this is censorship, as it appears to be, it's censorship in the way Hollywood did pre-codes, in that it gets around the censors because her post-kiss face is very kissed.
Yeah.
It's very erotic face.
And she definitely was resisting it, but only because she's resisting herself. This is like...
Well, yeah, she says she can't fight it anymore either. You must resist.
Yeah. This is everyone's worst nightmare, I imagine. If
again,
they're in an adulterous affair or a burgeoning adulterous affair, the door opens behind her and the wife is right there.
And not only that, but she's got a cloak on in front of her face that she then removes and drops to the ground.
She looks like Bette Davis and she's going to brandish a gun.
Yeah, basically. So this is all played in... It is the quintessential melodrama affair scene, of two people getting caught before they've even had a chance to enjoy the goods.
Yeah.
And with a dying wife. But it's played in a completely stylized and self-aware way that's not camp. It's just stylized.
That scene basically comes to a head with Setsuko getting slapped in the face a couple of times.
So I thought that what they were doing here, unfortunately, was throwing this sympathetic wife under the bus. She is for the duration of this scene.
Yeah, but
much.
She's just enraged. I mean, that's probably how most people would feel.
Yeah, absolutely. So she basically calls Setsuko a slut and slaps her around.
Yeah, but then...
And this is where Setsuko does prove that she knows how to say that she loves a man like she means it.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that this came out before the second film we're going to discuss. So she admits, she makes a confession, and that's when she gets herself slapped.
The wife collapses not long after this.
Oh, it's just horrific.
Yeah.
On her knees with the blood spitting onto the floor.
Yeah, I mean, her lungs are dead now. They're like, they'd have to be
She used
repaired.
up the last of them to do this.
Yeah, and that's not an unrealistic way for tuberculosis to go either, right? Overtaxing yourself, it will cost you your life, possibly.
And Rukichi is really bewildered about how to act in this whole scenario, because Setsuko's running off, but then his wife is dying, so obviously he has to stay and attend to his wife.
Yeah.
And she does scream, you're mine, a couple of times.
Yeah.
Before collapsing.
She used up the last bit of her energy in a cause she believed in. So Setsuko Hara returns to her old apartment complex where the callow medical student, her sort of boyfriend, is there, and he is packing up to leave. He's going back to his home where they live by a little bit of farming and fishing.
And then he makes a lyrical speech about being a peasant, sort of like in those Capricorn movies, Mr. Deeds and Mr. Smith and whatnot, where the man-child talks a bit about rural Midwest and Jean Arthur gets all misty-eyed.
Yeah, now that's not the case in this one. It's not like he's being completely made fun of, but I don't feel like the movie believes that these are values that...
I hope not.
It feels like a real retreat from life. It doesn't feel like
she's... But that's exactly what she wants at this moment.
Exactly.
And so she agrees to it.
Yeah, but watching the movie, you're like, no, don't do it, Setsuko. This is not where you need to go.
So at this point in the plot, whose name am I going to start speaking about, Dave?
I don't know.
Well, we get two Henry James novel ending tropes in a row.
Ah, good.
We get the ending of Portrait of a Lady with the ending of Wings of the Dove on top of it.
So he's Goodwood?
He's Goodwood. A very different kind of Goodwood.
Goodwood is...
Do you see it, though?
Yeah, but Goodwood is a little bit more...
It is a...
He hasn't been to jail for selling flour.
But he's offering her a retreat from life.
Yes, definitely.
A very tempting retreat from life. That's the only role he can possibly be fulfilling here. Otherwise, why is this guy even in the movie other than to make us wonder which way she should go? Because right now it really looks like going with the husband is not the way to go.
I do think it's really interesting that the straight arrow other man option is a guy who went to jail for selling fake goods. That's obviously a commentary, but he's not an unsympathetic character.
No, not at all.
He just doesn't have enough of the life force to measure up to Setsuko. We don't want her to wind up with this guy.
And you think this
left-leaning
liberal you love this guy.
Yeah.
Even though he's so middle-aged and befuddled.
I think he's a really good character, yeah.
He just doesn't know what to do. He just can't do the right thing.
Well, what is the right thing?
It's like Pierre. He just can't do the right thing.
There is no right thing in this situation. He's tortured. She does agree to go with him.
This guy does offer a quality that belongs to the Setsuko Hara persona that could make you a successful female medical student in Japan in 1948, which is determination.
Yes.
We've already seen that at the end of No Regrets for Our Youth, how determined she can get.
He says she is the model for him. She's the only reason he stuck it out this long as a student, because he saw her.
Yep.
So she's well respected amongst her peers. She's not some wallflower.
Non-serious person.
No, she's the most serious person in the movie, clearly. So that's all settled. She's basically said, that's it, I give up.
I'm gonna meet you at the train.
Yeah. She only goes home, actually, because she's summoned back there by the daughter of the family.
Yes, on behalf of the dying mother.
Yeah, she does go back, even though she's quite mortified, and this has been the scene of the
murder.
Just the worst possible thing that she could have imagined happening, or worst possible outcome. She sits down next to Haruko Sugimura, and
I got the tears.
Yeah.
The tears were flowing.
Here she gets absolution. Here they come to a meeting of the minds. It's not saintly because she knows she's dying. She's not giving up the husband.
Well, it's a little like the mother in that Borzage movie we just watched, After Tomorrow, in that she just doesn't want, in this case, her entire life to end on that note.
Yeah, of slapping this wonderful girl.
And slut-shaming and screaming you're mine.
Yeah, so she's like, you have to take care of the kids. She doesn't mention the husband.
But that's implicit.
Yeah, only you can do it, she says.
It's a little bit like Melanie and Scarlett, except Scarlett doesn't take the option.
A major thing, because presumably other people could technically take care of those kids, but nobody would do it with such greatness of spirit.
It's kind of important that we have seen those wonderful interactions she has with them and how much they both get out of it.
Yeah.
Because that is actually going to be a major motive. It's not just this erotic passion for this guy.
No, it's the whole package.
Yeah. So this is what makes her willing to fill this role despite the kind of awful guilt that will potentially be hanging over them. But I think the last scene dispels that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it really does end on a pretty amazing note.
It's like a remarkable, weird final image.
And her leave taking from the guy going back to the country is great too.
Sure, while they shake hands. What did you like about it?
The understated way in which it was played and his acknowledgement that probably it's for the best, even though that's not what he was hoping. He thought he was going to be bringing her home to mom. And yeah, he doesn't lash out at her or have any harsh words for her. He also parts on good terms.
Yeah, that's not like Goodwood.
No.
who swears that he will pursue Isabel to the ends of the earth.
Right. Well, no, this guy, it was really like an afterthought for him. He's like, well, I'm going home. Why don't you come with me?
But the convention with the kids did remind me of the critics who have argued that helping out Pansy Osmond really is a motive for Isabel going back to her horrible husband.
Well, I think that's probably true. She goes home and it's snowing. He's sitting in there reading something or writing a political speech, and he opens the window.
No, but first there's this detached mitten knocking on the window.
Yes.
That seems like it got taken from the Wuthering Heights scene of Catherine's ghost.
A ghost story, yeah.
So I wonder if that was an intentional
borrowing.
I think
so, yeah.
So we're a little creeped out, and then Heathcliff, it's me, Kathy, I've come home, and he pulls her into the window.
It's incredible.
And she says, I'm back, and I feel like this scene is like the ghost is the father in reverse, and this is like a consummation of incest at last.
Yeah.
And
a joyful consummation of incest.
A joyful consummation of incest, forbidden incest.
She just looks so unambiguously happy,
and
which
like
is not something you see from Setsuko Hara.
And he pulls her up like a child out of the snow.
So if you want ambiguity, you could take that angle and be disturbed by it, but...
And the thing is, too, the way I've always read as an adult watching Gone with the Wind, the relationship between Melanie and Scarlett is that Melanie is the mother, whose relationship is, like, it's an Oedipal triangle, but the relationship with the mother is actually the more powerful, important one that has to be completely buried from consciousness, so they can only have this one last emotionally charged confrontation, and I feel like that's the same thing operating here, where the mother has to give permission. Yes, you can have the incestuous consummation with your father. I'll just step out of the way. Or maybe she's the ghost because she is now finally in the mother's position, taken over her role in order to consummate this relationship.
My thought was that they no longer have to obey regulation human rules, and they are in a supernatural place of grace, romantic grace.
As we know from Pola X, incest can get you there. It is notable that before this scene at the window, we do see in his study that the picture of the wife is there draped with black. we did see Setsuko Hara freak out after talking to the wife and then hearing her die, right? From paroxysms of guilt. So this is something they're going to have to continue to live with, but this final image assures us, and this is a place that Henry James definitely never went, that they will be able to do that somehow.
Yeah, and they're not going to expunge her from their memory, from the kids' memories.
Which is the Millie Teal part of it, except that, again, they take this on rather than deciding that they can't go on that way.
Yeah, no renunciation in this film.
No, unusually. Very unusual for Setsuko.
And we're going to get that again. Let's move over to Here's to the Young Lady.
I'll tell you what I found out about this director.
This is someone we've never encountered before.
So, as I said, is well known for having made some movies that helped make Hideko Takamine famous. And the other notable fact about him in this long Wikipedia entry, for one thing, he didn't come from a middle-class background and didn't have a university education. His family owned a grocery store, so he had to come up in a different way from directors who did have university education. It says here he was not initially allowed to work as an assistant director and had to start as a photographer. And then eventually it is Yoshimura, our other director today, who I guess gave him his break by telling him it was time for him to switch from being a camera assistant to an assistant director.
Interesting. So the proletarian background of the male protagonist here is something that would have been very close to his heart.
A small business owner who is not considered to be polite middle class in the class terms of his time.
Yeah.
And it should come as no surprise to you after seeing that film to also learn that he was an openly gay director.
Ah, interesting.
That makes one of the scenes make a little more sense, doesn't it? Especially considering the note here on the IMDb page for the movie that substitutes, seems like a fan inserted trivia that substitutes for a plot description, which is Goro is not Keizu's real brother, though he calls Keizu brother, Aniki. Goro was an orphan whose parents were killed in the war and was raised and trained by Keizu. Some more hazy, incestuous family relationships in this movie. I guess that's good enough for us to get started.
It's a really interesting movie because it definitely has some serious moments in it, but it plays a lot of times like a screwball comedy. Certainly the way it begins.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's tonally really complex.
You've got a fancy car breaks down in a big city. Driver apologizes to the guy who he just calls director. He gets out of the car. He's an older man, I guess probably in his 50s. He says, well, this incident makes me think of something. And he runs off to an auto body shop. Where he starts accosting the guy that runs this place and pestering him about meeting a young lady that he thinks would be perfect for him. And he says, look, you're 32 now. It's time to get married. And the guy says, no, I'm 34. He's like, even more so then. You have to meet this young lady. She's perfect for you.
So he is the, well-known from Ozu movies, the Japanese matchmaker. Or the arranged marriage, remnant of tradition hanging on matchmaker.
But this is a weird, forward-facing matchmaker, right? Because he's going outside of normal class boundaries. He's saying, like, look, you're a prosperous businessman. You've built this all by yourself. You came up from nothing.
And he shows him a picture of this girl from a good family, and the guy's like, that's a schoolgirl. What's the matter with you?
Yeah. How else are you going to make him not eager to meet Setsuko Hara? So you have to show a picture of her when she's not an adult yet.
So this actor's name, who was great, but we don't know him from any other movies, is Shuji Sano, and he plays
Keizo Ishizu.
And Setsuko Hara plays Yasuko
Ikeda. The idea here is that she's ready for marriage. She's in her mid-20s. He's got this money now. He should be putting it into a marriage and using it to raise kids. And it's just time for everyone to get with the program here. And he puts it, he's just totally disinterested. He's just like a friend of the family.
And there's a lot of physical comedy where he is fainting, threatening this guy, and he's going to throw him over the balcony.
Yeah, that's amazing. He just follows him up to his dwelling. I guess he lives upstairs from the body shop. He just says, like, I'm stubborn. I'm not going to give up. And our protagonist is also quite stubborn, but he tries to think of a few stratagems. Finally, he says, well, look, I go for lunch every day at the Sparrow at noon.
Which is a low-class dive, basically.
Tell her to show up there. I guess I'll meet her. And the guy's like, well, you want her to meet you there? And he's like, if you don't like it, forget about the whole plan. So the guy says, okay, she'll meet you there at noon tomorrow. Everybody feels like they won in that case, I guess. Keizo doesn't have to do anything different.
Do we meet the adopted brother at that point?
Yeah, he's just there for the whole
and
thing.
there's a guitar that they pass back and forth and strum to express their emotions and sometimes sing along with.
Well, the brother can play the guitar, and Keizo can't. He just plays it like a 4-year-old.
Sure, but he does use it to express his emotions.
Yes, which are very jangled. He really seems like the kind of guy, this is a character we're quite familiar with from many movies from around the world. Just all his energy has been spent on building a business. He has never thought very much about getting married or women in general.
He could just turn into a bachelor forever if someone doesn't, take him in hand.
And the brother, he is like a playboy, and he's got particularly one girl that he's really into, but she's not marriageable.
He's not much of a playboy. He's just got this one girl he's in love with who is a dancer.
Yeah.
Who I guess is a semi-prostitute.
Keizo has said, why are you wasting your time with her? You're not allowed to marry her. So it's final.
It's also this car that the brother really wants, and Keizo...
Please don't sell it.
Keizo thinks that's stupid because we're in the business of selling cars.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
That part makes sense.
Yeah. We go to the Sparrow the next day.
First we get an amazing scene with the owner of the Sparrow.
Yeah, she basically professes her love to Keizo.
And he makes vomiting noises.
Yeah, Jesus.
He's very uncouth.
Yeah.
And the actress must be playing older because she looks like the same age as the actor, but he's really not into this.
He shows up in his...
She's not the slightest bit bothered, so I think she's either supposed to be some kind of, I don't know, somehow she's just untouchable, maybe because of her position as the owner of, what seems like pretty much a geisha joint, we learn later.
Most of the people there are women waiting around for men to come in. Yeah, at least a clip joint, or, they encourage men to drink or whatever, right?
She's a little like I can't remember, I'm gonna kick myself, I don't remember which actress it is in the Roaring Twenties who has a crush on James Cagney.
Gladys George, Panama Smith.
Yeah, although Gladys George is a cooler version of this character. It's more of a realistic love triangle.
In this one, she's just there but she does keep coming back, and she has some insight into...
at the end she becomes very important.
But yeah, he has a bantering relationship with both of them. He calls the younger barmaid stupid all the time.
And she makes faces at him.
Yeah, that's just what they do every day. Yeah, he drinks and eats there, and he's got his rubber boots on. He's made no effort. And that's by design.
Well, but we know already that he's very nervous because this girl is out of his class league.
Yeah, so he's basically decided that he knows that if he tries to do anything different, he's just gonna fail to anticipate what that should be anyway, and it'll probably make it worse, so he's just gonna show up exactly as is, and she won't like him, and that'll be the end of it.
We should also comment on the style of this film, besides the fact that it very effectively moves between very serious drama and screwball comedy throughout the entire length. There's also some very inventive scene transitions that are similar to the ones we saw in the first Setsuko Hara movie we watched.
Wipes?
Yeah, different kinds of pop art kind of style wipes and...
Michael Curtiz stuff from the 30s, yeah.
Yeah, and then you see it again in the 60s. You see it in the 50s and 60s with the... I guess, are all the... Yeah, late 50s. 50s and 60s with the Doris Day and Rock Hudson comedies and with the Tashlin comedies. I think some of them do that.
Sure.
That kind of stuff. But you really don't. There's a long period of classical Hollywood filmmaking where this kind of playfulness certainly isn't, at least in the canonical films that we tend to watch.
No, because there it became the Hawksian dictum that you should be totally transparent and not draw attention to your camera tricks and editing tricks.
The Japanese seem to give no fucks about that.
Depends on the director, probably. Right? Ozu, obviously, I don't know if you could call it transparent style, but it's the eye-level aesthetic where everybody's looking right at you.
Well,
all
that's
the
true.
time.
I mean, here it is. It's not like it was verboten.
No,
it could be part of a popular filmmaking style at this period.
Yeah, sure. Those tools were available. Just had to want to do it. Everything comes to a head in this scene when a car pulls up, the matchmaker gets out, and everyone's looking out the window, and they tell him, well, she's quite a lady. And obviously at this point, Setsuko Hara had been a star in Japan for 10 years, and everyone's ready for her.
It's a real star entrance.
Yeah.
A delayed star entrance.
And, it really has to be, because...
Although she is second billed, because in both of these movies, she isn't the protagonist.
Right. But it has to be like that because he falls in love with her at first sight.
I'm sorry, let me take that back. I guess in Temptation, it's like a dual protagonist ship.
Yeah, in this one, she comes into his story. Although...
Again, yeah, as the movie goes on, she becomes more of a point of view
we
character.
do see her without him sometimes, too, as
Yeah.
it goes along. They don't talk at all, hardly, in this scene.
It's very awkward.
But he's in love with her by the end of it, and he wasn't prepared for her to be like this. She's in her mid-20s. She's not whatever she looked like in the picture
And
anymore.
she's doing a bit of a self-parody here, but not in a way that undercuts her dramatic performance when necessary.
No, and she's in a really tough spot, as we discover later. We don't know anything about what's going on in her life.
We're gonna get to that. I was just gonna say what this movie is doing for her persona. It reminded me of a cross between the Hollywood Canteen, where you get a date with the star being Setsuko Haras, like just
Instead of Joan Leslie.
some dopey proletariat guy gets, like that's part of the premise, some dopey proletariat guy gets an opportunity to marry Setsuko Haras, basically,
Right.
as she is perceived. And a cross between that and some kind of like Katharine Hepburn takedown, but much less mean-spirited than Hepburn operated on herself.
Well, yeah, there are some scenes that do echo Woman of the Year in this. Yeah, right?
Yeah. She
The
does
boxing.
she has to get shamed at the end, and yeah, a lot of stuff like that. And of course, the director could have seen that. This comes way after Woman of the Year.
Yeah.
Apparently, two of the actresses that she got compared to a lot of this period were Katharine Hepburn and Joan Crawford.
Joan Crawford?
I don't know. It must just be the hair and the melodrama.
Garbo, I can see. She wants to be alone,
Yeah.
But Joan Crawford makes no sense.
No, just the hair and the melodrama.
Right. After that meeting, he basically decides, well, I guess I would marry her if she actually accepts me.
He says, I was struck by lightning.
Yeah, so the brother makes fun of him. It's out there. He sends word through the matchmaker that he will marry her. And then, remarkably, the word comes back that she accepts. So now it's all happened, like, in one day.
And this, like, I just went partly because it was so constantly surprising tonally, I just went with this movie scene by scene. And I normally don't try to anticipate what's going to happen in a movie, but sometimes it happens anyway. But in this movie, I did not anticipate anything. I didn't try to figure out why she was saying yes, because I could have guessed it, but instead it came as a wonderful surprise and enrichment of the scenario that I thought we were in.
He goes to meet her family, and they live in this grand house, and he remarks upon that.
This is a fantastic scene.
Yeah, and she says it's just appearance. And as the room clears out when they're left alone, he starts to realize...
After the whole family, literally, like the parents and the grandparents and the brother and the kids have all been paraded in front of him.
Yeah, he starts to realize that she wasn't lying about that. It's true.
Well, we get a bunch of point of view shots where now he's noticing how shabby the fixtures and furnishings are.
So we're dealing with a family that has gone through some kind of massive decline in class status equivalent to Anjo House. Although they're further along on that degradation, Anjo House still looked remarkable.
Sure.
Here, it's really gone to seed, and they have no money. They owe tons of money, and they haven't been keeping up the house. They don't have a piano. The grandmother suggests that Setsuko play the piano.
Well, that's what tips everything off.
She says, well, I can't. We sold it. Unfortunately. I thought you might have been advised about all of this. We are in dire financial straits, and also I was engaged before to someone who died. Or she doesn't actually say that. She just says, ask the matchmaker about all of this. He'll tell you.
And then the matchmaker tells even more. There's even more to the story.
Here we get a picture of someone who is not so different from her Tokyo Story character, right? Except that she was actually married. In this case, she never got to be married to the soldier who was killed.
I thought about that too, how this is a facet of her persona. The reason she's so aloof with men is because she feels like she's used up all her emotion.
Yeah, her heart belongs to someone who is gone.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how she puts it in this
She's even called aloof at a certain point here. There are Katharine Hepburn style in film diegetic discussions of her persona.
Yes, which we don't get in the Ozu movies. People are usually, they're kept too much at arm's length to even get their opinions in edgewise in the dramas that are going on between between herself and her family.
And I was going to say it's because the comedy tone in this one allows it, but actually the tone is often comedic in Ozu's dramas.
Yeah, I know. It's just that, people can't...
The tone around her isn't comedic.
That's right. And the suitors are really ephemeral most of the time. Like, we don't even meet the suitor, do we? In Late Spring? No, we never meet the suitor. We meet the pupil of the
I don't think so.
of the father, who also has a yen for her, but not the actual man that she's getting married to at the end of Late Spring. He never actually shows up on screen, I don't think.
I don't think so, but I've only seen it once.
Well, we'll be seeing it again soon.
Yeah.
Which I'm very excited about. But yeah, this guy gets a lot of opportunities to comment on how it feels to be in love with Setsuko Hara.
Especially when you're just like a pleb.
Yeah.
Matchmaker tells him the rest of the story, which is that to even keep this house in the state that it's in, they've had to take out
a huge loan.
million yen.
It's payable right now.
And up to this point, this guy has some kind of a mixture of qualities, and didn't really think about how I felt about him. But from the point where he kind of pretty much says that he's willing to take on, like in a melodrama, he might feel very betrayed hearing all of this information, right? At least temporarily reject her or think bad things about her or something. And he doesn't do any of that. He just kind of looks worried, and he's like, well, I really like her, so I think I probably still do want to help them out financially. And then the matchmaker comes up with the compromise of, well, why don't you date her for 3 months and...
until the loan is due, and then marry her if you feel like it's gonna work,
or
and
let
don't...
them all go to rot.
Yeah. The main problem is that this Keizo knows, given all this information, that she has to be doing this at least partially under duress.
Oh, yeah, and he doesn't react with anger.
No, of course not. He's just like, this is going to be terrible for her.
Yeah.
If she has to pretend to love me just to get me to pay her family's debts.
But he can't extract himself from it because he's got a real crush on her now. Or maybe more than that. He says it was love at first sight.
Oh, yeah, and I believe him.
Feel the same way.
Well, I don't know. But they have 3 months here, at the very least, to try to figure it out before any decisions have to be made. One thing I did want to mention, just because, again, it's relevant proleptically to Tokyo Story. The mother in Tokyo Story plays the mother in this one as well.
Maybe she's like Beulah Bondi. Maybe she does that a lot.
The other thing we didn't mention, which
because,
we
like,
need to...
she's barely seen in this movie.
So why is the family in such dire straits? It's not just because of taxes, it's because the father was talked into going into a business and then left holding the bag, and he's now in jail.
So I guess they were some kind of aristocratic family, and then they fell on bad times, and then he tried to launch this shitty business, and now they're really screwed up.
Yeah.
And we do meet the father in jail several times. He seems very nice.
Yes, he seems like a great guy, and she has a very close relationship with him, as you would expect her to have in any film. He keeps saying, don't do this, just to pull our fat out of the fire.
The truth is, she's in a real Jane Austen position here. How could she do anything else? Her entire family is relying on her.
Of course, it is a very Jane Austen.
But Jane Austen's heroines usually say no anyway, and just fuck everything.
Right, well, no, she doesn't say no, but she is definitely holding back, right?
At this point in the movie, again, I just don't know where it's going to go. I don't know if it's going to turn out... I wasn't really expecting it to turn out that they would get along, but it initially seems like they really are.
Yeah, well, they are developing a friendship at the very least.
Yeah,
and
they
he
have a
is in love
rapport.
with her, and she is
she's
not having a bad time with him at all.
She's liking him more and more, and we see why. So they go to the ballet, which is her comfort zone, and quite unlike Spencer Tracy's interactions with Katharine Hepburn's World and Woman of the Year, he doesn't feel uncomfortable, and it's more like him going to the ball game.
And getting really into it. Yeah.
And getting really into it.
Mystified by it, and he's like, really, his face when he's watching it at first is amazing. He's like, it looks like he's watching some kind of
horror movie.
Yeah. And then he starts crying, and he gets so into this Chopin.
And it seems to just be like, it's not like he's crying because there's a storyline, it's just because the dancing and the music are so beautiful.
It's so affecting.
Because Chopin didn't write ballets, so they're just doing some kind of abstract dance.
Interpretation, yeah. And also he's feeding off of her. She is very moved by it. And we find out later that this was a favorite piece of her dead fiancé.
I don't think he is.
I think so.
I don't see him looking at her and getting cued. She's not even crying.
But he associates the piece with her, and he keeps playing it, right?
I just think he really likes the ballet.
I think that's probably true, but I do think that it's at least partly fueled by his knowledge that she's interested in it.
Anyway, as far as having fine feelings go, he can fit into her world. It's not inaccessible to him. It's inaccessible in terms of the etiquette.
Yeah, and then she returns the favor by offering to go to a boxing match, which he was not even going to suggest. They just happened to pass by a handbill for it.
And she doesn't look like she's trying to please him. It sounds like she always thought that this might be fun, but then when she actually gets there, her reaction is a lot more ambivalent.
It's true. Now, she is sort of sympathetically feeling the blows and grabbing for her nose when the guy gets a broken nose, but she also does punch out in the air a few times when whoever she's decided to support gets a few good shots in, but eventually she's like, okay, let's leave.
There's too much blood, I'm gonna start puking.
I've never seen a boxing match live. I'm sure it would be horrible.
I like boxing in theory, and I like boxing movies. I think I've even seen boxing on TV, but yeah, having seen boxing movies, and Jimmy Cagney and John Garfield and Robert De Niro getting their brains pummeled out, I think I'd probably react like Setsuko Hara to an actual match.
Yeah.
People in the front row would get like blood spattered.
Yeah, sure they do, and
spit spattered, and yeah.
No, it works incredibly well in a movie to show people being mistreated by capitalism, but something to just watch.
For entertainment.
It's never been something I've sought out, no.
But he's really into it as sport, as we find out much later.
And you can be forgiven for thinking that this may be a rapprochement between them. They may be able to cobble together some kind of really mutually satisfying relationship.
But unfortunately, this ghost is hanging over them.
Many ghosts.
Ghost of her past, as well as the specific ghost of her dead fiancé, who died because he'd been in a POW camp.
So her birthday is a big set piece. He hits upon this incredible idea. Why not bring a new piano, since the family had to let go of their old one?
And I'm on this guy's side. I think this is a great gesture.
Well, it is a great gesture, but on the other hand, you could see why a family would feel shamed by...
Sure. He doesn't even, it doesn't even register that this is a possibility.
No, because when you come from a background like his, it's like, look, let's get the things we need and want any way we can. We're not going to feel beholden to people but these guys are obviously, especially the grandmother, she just starts to cry as soon as they are given a piano.
Well, also, it may have broken her brain because she thought they still had one.
Well, she acts like it, but it seems pretty clear that she realizes what's going on when the piano shows up.
Yes. Right afterwards, she is shown, I think, with the parents and her husband having a conversation about, can our girl possibly go on in life having to marry a man like this?
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's this little whole entertainment section where all of these upper bourgeoisie people have their useless education and have developed their useless ornamental skills, and they're all going to show them off to each other.
And her sister is part of the menage, and she is married to a teacher who talks very self-deprecatingly about his income earning potential, and they have these little...
and he smirks at everybody all the time.
Yeah, that guy's amazing.
He was great.
They have these little kids they're just so lovable. They just jump on everybody's lap and want hugs.
Can you hold me?
I like that they say these kids actually like people. They were raised in China.
What does that even mean?
It must be some kind of comment on maybe this director doesn't like the way kids are being raised in Japan to be emotionless. I don't know. That's the only inference you can draw from it.
Be too formal or something. I don't know.
Yeah, these kids are just like, give me hugs. Or, maybe just because they were raised under conditions where it was a war zone and there was no room for formality and
Unfortunately,
etiquette.
The specific cultural reference is lost on us, as it is when finally our hero
sings
Keizo,
his town song, which is like a bumpkin song, and he's like totally off key.
He seems to be really hurting the ears of Setsuko Hara. Again, I don't understand the specific reference because drunk guys in Ozu movies sing this kind of song all the time.
Well, yeah, military songs.
Right.
Yeah, his singing doesn't go over well at all. His gift allows them to entertain themselves, but also brings grim depression into the minds of many family members.
And before he starts fucking everything up everything is fucked up when the sister sings a sad song, and then he sings. Before that's when Setsuko was trying to cheer herself and everyone else up, but by saying, oh, this is just like the old days when we used to spend our lives just sitting around doing skits.
Yeah, being aristocratic. Student days, she says. Yeah, so her private boarding school. This is a real problem here, and now it looks like things are on a downward spiral that maybe can't be escaped from. They go on another date the next time he sees her, and it's not going well at all. She's kind of not listening to him. He's so excited about what he can do for her and how much money his business is going to bring in and how he's going to diversify and start a manufacturing
He's going to start a factory
plant.
and exploit the hell out of everybody.
But he's also
He's so lovable.
Yeah, he's very childlike.
Well, he makes he's a Horatio Alger story. He talks about the poor background he came from and how I'm never ashamed to say that I love money because I was so poor. All I've done all my life is work to make more money, so don't worry about it. I'll take care of you.
You know what? For some reason, I couldn't help thinking about Adam Sandler in Punch Drunk Love in that scene. Because
he's very exuberant.
He's exuberant, and he's also, you may not remember this, or it may not be something that stuck with you, but he's a small business owner who's been very successful. Right? He's got all these employees.
I'm not sure how or why.
I don't know either. It's
but
not easy.
I thought he was just selling one stupid product.
No. Well, he's got those special plungers, but he's got all kinds of other things too. It's not a store. He's more like a wholesaler of novelty items, right? Anyway, he's done really well, and it hasn't translated into any kind of social success. Although our Keizo is a much more grounded and appealing guy in a lot of ways in normal social terms than Adam Sandler's character. But yeah, that's what I was thinking about. And he keeps talking about, all the great things that are gonna happen for them as a couple.
And she gets really uncomfortable after this and doesn't want to spend any more time that day dating him. I don't know. I wasn't quite sure how to read this. Was it his money talk that upset her?
I think it's just all of it, right? Like his exuberance and her inability to get in sync with that, and just the innocence of his feelings for her. I think, like, if he was a guy who was basically saying, I'm okay with buying you and you just have to be superficially nice, that's what she was prepared for.
Yeah, sure.
And he's so earnest about it that it's really getting her down because she can't reciprocate his feelings, and she really does want to. If she possibly could, she would like to be able to, because he seems like someone deserving of love.
And what do you think about that scene where she goes to the ballet school and sits down, and the scene just ends, like after she makes him end the date, and the scene just ends with her saying, I'm so hungry.
Yeah, it could be taken in so many different ways, right? In another movie, it could be taken to be some kind of veiled reference to feelings for the other women in the scene who are doing the ballet dancing.
Did not think of that one.
I don't think that that's a likely reading, but I think you could tease that out of it if you wanted to, the way she looks longingly at the ballet dancers.
I didn't think of that at all, but it's true that she goes to that. But who is that woman? That's not a relative?
No, a schoolmate.
A schoolmate. And she does say, I just wanted to see you, and then sits down and looks at the dancers and says that. So I guess I can see where you're coming from with that.
That's not really how I interpreted it, but it did flit through my mind. She said she's hungry.
There is 100% gay subtext, Dorothy Arzner levels of gay subtext in this movie.
Sure. But in general, I think she's just expressing a more universal hunger for emotions that she doesn't have, I think.
That's smart, because that's what he feels like when he sees the ballet too, right?
Yeah.
Except that he's actually able to feel those emotions. She's not the one crying at it. She thinks it's a little silly. It's like she would like to have that reaction.
That's right.
That is compatible with gay subtext, right? In that it's like, it's a reaction to the beauty of these dancers.
Whatever you want to take it to mean, it's definitely a longing for presence or closeness to something that is just eluding her at the moment.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good reading.
And it does pay off, this build-up of malaise that she's had throughout the whole scene, where they're talking together outside and then in the car, and she's just ignoring him, and she's got her mind on other things, and it's this. And turns out that they kind of had a meeting of the minds there, because he, as much as he's trying to keep up his bravado through all of this, but more and more he's realizing his worst fears are coming true. She's just not with him on the emotional level that he needs them to be at together.
And that's what he confronts her about the next time he comes over, although she initially tries to kind of divert him with cute tricks, because she would like to be able to go through with this marriage and basically for them to be friends on her side.
Yeah.
She's happy and willing to
She's happy to have sex with him too, clearly.
To go that far.
But just not to have any feelings for him that reach into the exalted plane.
Sure.
And for most men, presumably that would be fine. And that's what she was hoping she was going to get with this match.
So he starts talking about her as being... We go into the Philadelphia story routine where she is just inaccessible and aloof and never seems to be excited by his presence, and that's when she admits that, well, that's because this is how things are, I'm still in love with my dead fiancé.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, I have no emotions left over. That's what she tells him when, in the aftermath of the scene, when she comes to his apartment to really, really lay it out.
Yeah.
The terms on which they can be married.
Now, it's interesting, there's a kind of dialectic there, because his intense feelings that are generated by hearing this actually do start to melt her a bit. Like, she's already starting to feel things for him that she has just been saying she can't feel.
Well, it starts out with her giving him that extra strong sake, which loosens his tongue, which is why he's able to say all of these things, but not in a bad way.
No, he's not lashing out at her. He's just saying, this is such a terrible misfortune to befall us. I mean, I love you as no one has ever loved a woman before, and
but he
can't get through to you in a way that will actually make you happy and feel things back for me.
And he's still doing it as like a comedic performance. So this is not like some melodramatic speech he makes, and he just kind of sort of like kicks at the dirt until he is shuffling right out of the room.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Right onto the
But it's also very
lawn.
beautiful, that scene. Yeah, and this actually, against all odds, does have some kind of impact on her, because when they're saying goodnight that night, she gives him that weird kiss on the glove.
That's after she meets him. Is that after she meets him at his apartment?
Yeah, I think so.
No, that's got to be later, because he's dropping her off when that happens.
Yeah.
Does he drive her home?
Yeah, I think so.
That's what happens?
Yeah, and then she falls through the door and hits her sister.
Well, it's like the Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire moment where Ginger decides she's going to break all female conventions and make the first move.
Oh, you mean like in Swing Time?
Yeah, except that it's Setsuko Haras, and it's also probably not allowed for two people to kiss on the screen, as we've already established. So she can't quite break that barrier, but she does her own equivalent, which is to kiss his gloved hand, and then pratfall her way back into the apartment.
Yeah, that's so
into
great.
The house.
It's interesting you mentioned Fred and Ginger, because they never kiss in movies.
Really?
Until Carefree.
And that's behind the door that kiss happens.
Yeah, exactly. The Swing Time, that's still in the period where they have never kissed on screen. His wife refused to allow it, apparently.
Amazing.
It was too upsetting to her. But then they finally do have a kiss in Carefree. But anyway, Setsuko Hara, we see a glove kiss, amazing pratfall.
Little Age of Innocence type deal there.
I mean, that scene just winds up so well, too, with the sister feeling her nose because she got bonked, and it's just great.
She must have been looking through the keyhole.
Yeah, exactly, and she was not expecting the door to open that quickly, and yeah, everything went wrong for everybody there,
and then he's like, my glove, it's like he's never going to wash it again or something.
Now, we in the audience, I think, anyway, I did feel like, okay, it really is happening. Yeah, she's falling in love with him, but he doesn't get that. He's like, that was a weird aberration. Because he's still on this...
No, that's not true. Because he does agree to go through with the marriage, so he must see that she's developing feelings. It's the family that fucks him up.
He's not confident at all, right? Because otherwise he would be okay with just continuing no matter what.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, it's on the eve of their marriage that he is sitting around with her family, and the grandmother just slights into the poor guy.
Yeah.
Although, not directly, but...
She's just talking in generalities about what a calamity this is.
How unhappy he's making her granddaughter.
Yeah, and he can't bear this, so...
But then it's also hilarious because the bit of slapstick where he's not used to assuming this traditional Japanese position cross-legged on the floor.
Yeah, he twists his ankle. He can't even walk. It's really hilarious.
He starts crawling?
Yeah, he has to crawl off the scene, and he's like really working out the kinks for a few minutes out in the hallway. These are scenes that have never been shot before, I don't think. Never been conceived of before. His decision is that he's got to let her out of this, and, it won't do anyone any good if he lets her out of it and lets them all starve. So he's going to actually fulfill all of the economic part of the bargain and then not make her marry him and then go away for 10 days and just brood. We didn't mention all the stuff about the brother.
Oh, right.
Which has been building building in parallel.
All of this brother subplot. Well, I mean, it's just the same thing over and over again, which is that he keeps asking for his brother's approval. I mean, he obviously really cares for his brother and would like this father-like approval to be extended to his marriage, but also he
works for him, too.
He works for him. He's reliant on this as a source of income.
He'll be kicked out of the auto body shop if he marries this dancer.
And the woman is willing to, go away, leave this alone, go get other work in another place.
Yeah.
And that's the crisis point.
Yeah, well, she basically makes the decision, okay, this is never happening, I'm leaving, that's it. And he is drinking in the bar by himself.
Right, well, before, this is the Dorothy Arzner scene.
Yeah.
I was like, how did this movie suddenly turn into a Dorothy Arzner movie? Suddenly there's giant queer subtext all over a dancing scene.
Yeah.
Or also Olivia,
sure.
Jacqueline Audrey.
Yeah.
Except that was actually at least in the context of a girls' boarding school. This just doesn't make any sense. All of a sudden, as this brother is mourning the loss of his relationship, this is a point where actually Keizo is feeling good about his relationship.
Yeah.
So it's extra cruel. And then he just tells his brother, just get over it. She's no good anyway.
Here, I'll dance with you.
Yeah. And then they start dancing together in this really sexual way. And I thought they were literally brothers. I missed the part where they weren't.
Well, I don't think it's ever stated in the subtitles. I think someone needs to know Japanese to understand that.
Maybe. And then all of the geishas start dancing with each other.
Yeah.
And
finally the brother is
it's
fuck off, I'm dancing with one of these.
It's like the boarding house beginning of, which Arzner movie was that? Working Girls.
Yeah.
But he seems to break away from his brother because it's getting too sexually intense.
Yeah.
There's no other way to read this scene, so it doesn't fit in with anything else in the movie.
No.
I don't think you can really read it in terms of this character actually being bisexual.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, it's interesting. It's an arresting moment in the film, for sure. And then, it builds to a fist fight.
I guess you could put it in the overall context of there being a lot of incestuous family feeling in these family melodramas.
Yeah, sure. Confusion. Where does romance and fraternal feeling, where is the border between these things? It builds to a fight.
It's certainly a starting point for a fanfiction story in which Keizo is only marrying Setsuko Hara as a sort of diva figure.
Right.
And a beard. But that doesn't fit in with anything else
does not
in the movie.
In. Why would he be so upset? Yeah, no. He definitely is focused on her. But yeah, we don't know what's going on here. But it's interesting. And he's really insistent that his brother cannot marry this person. And it does get to the point of fisticuffs.
Yeah.
He knocks him down. This is not a very appealing aspect of Keizu's character. He is
but as soon as he's done it, he does feel
well,
terrible.
yeah, sure. And that's where, again, we see the Keizo we know and love. He knows that he has gone too far.
That happens later when the brother says that he's going to marry the girl.
Okay, but it's
so Keizo's not even drunk when that happens, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either. Yeah, it's the same setting, so they kind of blur together.
But then he goes running after Keizo when Keizo leaves, so it's still, and it's like a kind of comedic run, so it still ends on a comedy and loving family note.
It's shown to be just the kind of thing that happens between brothers. The big brother has to sometimes punch the little brother in the face.
It does
he
look
won't
like
do what he's told to do.
It really does look like he's going to go Walter Houston on him, like in that Of Human Hearts, that he's just going to be the patriarch and beat down this defiant, stupid son.
Yeah, he is holding to that line right up until the end when he has a change of heart both ways. First, he's like, okay, my brother, he's found love, and everything actually is mutual between them. They have to get married, and they have to have this car. And Setsuko, she just doesn't feel the right way about me. We can't get married. I have to run away. And so he has those two epiphanies together.
And then when Setsuko gets his letter, that's when she has her Jane Austen moment, or Scarlett O'Hara, whichever you prefer, of fully realizing that she's been in love with this guy for a long time and she didn't know it.
Yeah, Mr. Knightley.
Or Mr. Darcy, or Rhett Butler. It's all the same thing.
And what's the guy in Sense and Sensibility? maybe? Edward?
No, she doesn't ever really feel anything for him. Jane Austen hasn't figured out her technique at that point.
Yeah.
Or maybe she really has figured it out and it's like dissonant, like one of Shakespeare's problem comedies. No,
Yeah.
Austen heroines actually have epiphany scenes, and this one is structured like the Scarlet O'Hara, which was kind of annoying, actually, because we didn't need, like, Selznick's instinct for putting the voiceover over Vivian Lee's blank, mask-like, sort of resting bitch face is perfect. I love Lee's performance in that movie, but it's very specific. That's perfect for that moment in that movie, but Setsuko Hara can emote with her face, so we don't really need to be hearing the memory fragments of their relationship.
We don't need it, but it's not so terrible because the audience might have forgotten the statements that he had made in the past. It's not like we hear her thoughts. We hear what he has said.
I was just glad when his voice shut up and we could just see her face.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it was necessary.
I felt more emotional at that point.
I thought we might get the romantic comedy run here. We sort of do.
Well, the whole last section is like a romantic comedy run.
Yeah, but it's not quite shot with...
But we do get a romantic comedy. It's like the version of that for a polite, well-raised, well-bred girl, because she doesn't burst into a run. She just walks quicker at certain moments.
Yeah.
we see her feet on
and
the sidewalk.
There's a race against time because he's decided to leave town. He's got a train at 3:00, but he first goes for lunch and to Kvetch at the Sparrow, where they have all of the marriage ceremony accoutrements set up, and he says, "Wedding's off, sorry.
And in the English,
I can't do it to her."
In the English translation, the saloon owner just keeps going, "What an annoying girl! What an irritating girl!" I don't know what a better translation of that would be.
Well, maybe that is it. I mean, how could she do this to you? You're perfect, Keizo.
And how could she do this to me? I was going to make a lot of money off of this.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
I've shut the place down for you.
Keizo, he leaves, so she doesn't get there in time to stop him. But when she does get there, they talk. We do get the helpful information relayed to Setsuko Hara that he's been playing the Chopin record that he bought, which signifies her and his feelings for her.
So she gets this Katharine Hepburn, or Jane Austen's Emma style dressing down in the most vulgar way possible. Like, this is how she has to make up for her class position, right? That this really vulgar, extremely drunk woman gets to just dress her down for what feels like 10 minutes. But she finally turns around when she realizes that Setsuko Hara does love him.
We do get the information, the necessary information that he hasn't left town yet. She can catch him at the train station.
But the woman keeps telling her, you have to, as he has been telling her for a long time, you have to be able to express it in a way that really shows me that you love me. We find out that there are many barriers of that, not just the reserve that her education has imbued her with, but also she confesses when she's in his room that time that this fiancé who she says she's used up all her feelings on.
They never actually kissed.
So she's never actually felt, he is kind of an Ashley Wilkes, because she's never actually felt sexual love.
Well, we don't know about that. It's just...
Well, that's how I take it.
Either she hasn't felt it, or they never got a chance to express it. That's kind of more how I thought about it, but maybe you're right.
Well, I took it as because she's never been able to, because of their class,
I mean, they would have been chaperoned all the time.
Yeah, she's never been able to overcome this reserve with anyone, so that there is still a new source of experience waiting for her with this guy.
Oh, yeah, of course.
If they can get here.
Yeah.
A new basis for feeling. Or maybe even real feeling as opposed to, like, whatever fantasy she had attached to this former relationship. Possibly.
Well, either way, it's going to be totally different.
Yes. Yes, she can still... at that moment when she says that, to me, that showed me that she's wrong and that she is, luckily, unlike her Ozu character, still capable of having another relationship, of having renewal, right?
Although, we don't get to see it, because the last scene is her driving off to meet him at the station, although we do feel certain that she's going to get there in time.
And she never does...
Kiss him.
And she never does manage to convincingly say that she loves him.
No, that's all left to our imagination.
But she plays that as comedy.
Well, she does say that she loves him at the bar, but just not to him.
Yeah, but, and again, not convincingly.
Well, I think it's getting pretty convincing at that point, and her feelings are...
I don't know, I took it as comedy, the way in which she says it.
Yeah, but her feelings are pretty plain.
Shyly and quietly.
When
not the way the barkeeper would say it.
No. No, the important thing is when she reads the letter and how she looks at us.
Yeah.
But we don't know if she's ever going to convey it to him, although we are led to assume that it's going to work out.
I thought that was very clever and self-conscious the way it's playing with her persona. On the one hand, saying that it needs to change, that these are problems with her as a woman, but on the other hand, denying that change. We can't fully see it take place in front of us because then it would contradict the basis of her star power.
Yeah, and what an amazing backstory both of these films give us to the Ozu era, which is about to start.
Everything's in place already.
It really is.
And these are just really wonderful movies that show that there is so much more to Japanese cinema of this era than the 4 or 5 directors that everybody has heard about here in North America.
Probably 30 or 40 directors that we need to be paying attention to, and we will if we live long enough and keep podcasting long enough. We'll get to everybody.
And people keep subtitling, and the world of film culture goes on somehow.
The world itself.
The world itself goes on somehow.
Next week, we're going back to the Hollywood studios year by year. It's 1932 RKO, and we've got a Gregory LaCava double feature scheduled for you. It's going to be Symphony of 6 Million and Age of Consent.
Whoa, have you seen either of these?
I've seen Age of Consent. I haven't seen Symphony of 6 Million. I'm a big LaCava fan, so I'm looking forward to discussing these with you. Do you know anything about these?
Nope, I have liked all the LaCava movies I've seen, I believe. The only ones I can identify are Stage Door, well, My Man Godfrey, and Primrose Path.
Yeah,
I'm
those
sure
are
I've
pretty
seen more
great
than
movies.
that, but those are all great. Kendall says something interesting about him. She thinks only his comedies, well, particularly those 2 I just mentioned, deserve to be called great, but she does say that every movie he'd made up to that point was very interesting and distinctive, so that makes me curious about them. And I think she's probably wrong. Like, I know The Primrose Path, I'd probably call that a great movie, so she's probably wrong. There's probably more than just the 2 that are great.
I mean, I guess we're going to find out. Pretty consistently wonderful director. Gregory LaCava next week. RKO.
Sounds great.
See you soon.